Hey, welcome to Adventures in Home Remodeling. I guess what's going on here? We got a little construction going.
Yeah, the old bar needs a little bit of an upgrade.
Soon be drinking in the official Drinking Griffin Tavern here.
That's right. Yeah, looking forward to it. So please excuse our working zone. But you know what? We've been working really hard and figured it's time to record and time for a couple of beers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nothing like taking a break in the workday to drink some good beer and talk about what really we're talking about with the crux of this episode: BJCP and me. Yeah. I guess not specifically me, but the BJCP style guidelines. With the big third episode of the podcast, kind of really getting down to the nitty gritty to what part of this entire show is about.
That's right.
So.
Yeah, and the BJCP stands for the Beer Judge Certification Program, and it's one organization that provides guidelines for beers and what beers in different categories should be. So if you're entering your beer in a brewing competition, chances are they are judging it not just for the merit of the beer, but against a set of guidelines. Mm-hmm. And most often, especially for homebrew competitions, those guidelines are the ones published by the BJCP.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. And in particular, we're taking a look at porters today.
Yeah, I thought it would be a good style, not a terribly challenging style, to go through the guidelines, see what the guidelines say about a particular style, and taste along with a couple of the what they call like commercial examples of the style, which is a great thing that the BJCP does. They'll give you a detailed list of guidelines.
Absolutely.
And then at the bottom of the guidelines, they will say, hey, here are 5 or 6 examples that you can get commercially if you want to try a prime example of what we mean by when we say an American porter. So we got a couple of those today.
Yeah, well, it looks like we've got Founders Porter, Great Lakes Edmund Fitzgerald, and Greenbush's Distorter.
That's right.
So those are all I think I've had all of these beers at one point.
Yeah, they're all 3 really great beers.
Pretty accessible.
And 2 of those 3 are in the BJCP sort of commercial examples of style. Although I really like the Greenbush Distorter an awful lot. Mm-hmm. So I was really excited to see how it might compare to 2 that are what the BJCP says are, the pinnacles of American porter style.
Yeah, of course. Well, if we want to just pour us a couple of beers and we can sort of talk all about these style guidelines. There's a lot to cover.
Yeah, let's do it. I think first up we have the Edmund Fitzgerald from Great Lakes.
Sure, works for me. All right, so we've got the Edmund Fitzgerald here.
Yep.
So I think we're going to talk a little bit less about actually judging these beers, so much as we're just going to be talking about the style guidelines themselves.
Yeah, let's do that.
So who makes this? Who got together and decided let's make our own certification program for beer judging?
Yeah, so the BJCP is an organization that's been around for at least a couple of decades now. Okay. They've put out at least 3 iterations of their style guidelines. Oh, wow. Okay. So I know they did one in 2008. They did a style guidelines in 2015. So they're probably about due for a new style guidelines. And then before 2008, I think there were 1 or 2 iterations also.
Gotcha.
So the BJCP not only put out the guidelines, mm-hmm. they also publish resources for people who are aspiring to judge. So it's a great resource, bjcp.org. And then also they administer tests to become BJCP certified judge. And to become a judge, you go through a couple of levels of exams, which are actually pretty intense. There's an online exam, and there's actually a tasting exam where we're doing just what we do on most of our episodes, kind of taste along and compare to the guidelines.
Oh, yeah. Man, I just want to stop you there really quick and just talk about how excellent this beer is. I mean, there's a reason why this is a prime example of the style.
It really is. So there are two really types of porters according to the BJCP. There's an American porter.
Right, which is what we have now.
Yes, that's right. And then there's also the English porter, which is going to be a little bit less roasty, a little more sweet and caramel forward, and a little bit less hoppy. Where this one, especially with the roastiness, it really comes through.
I do feel the roastiness. Yeah, I think that's something I really love in a beer like this.
Well, being somebody that appreciates coffee,
of course.
I mean, there's a lot of
there's a lot to love.
It doesn't taste like coffee. Like I wouldn't guess that there's coffee in the beer.
No, not at all.
But the roast malts really remind you of coffee.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's got the same sort of mouthfeel.
Yeah.
As you do. So what exactly do the guidelines cover? I know we talked about on episode 2. We sort of went through the 5 different categories that these cover.
That's right. So there will usually be a paragraph or at least a few guiding sentences under each of the main categories of tasting. So aroma, appearance, flavor, mouthfeel, and overall impression.
Right.
There's usually also a little section on history.
Okay.
On ingredients. And then also, some commercial examples of styles. So really, it gives a really detailed description. So when you crack open a beer like this and it says that it's a porter, you can pull the guidelines up.
Yeah.
You can download a PDF for free online and print it out or save it. And there's also an app. Just search for beer style guidelines. There's a free app that I use. Can pull it up, and if you order a porter that is really good, sometimes it's really nice to, as you're sipping, just kind of scroll through the guidelines and see if you can pick up what the guidelines describe the beer to be.
Sure. And we talked about this before, I think, but there being just other beer rating apps. I think Beer Advocate has one. One of the big ones is Untapped.
Yep.
And you can sort of, I really liked it, look at those style guidelines and then sort of judge the beer on these beer apps. So that I think that's a really neat practice. I haven't been doing that lately. With the COVID season, we haven't really been going out to bars and things like that. But once we're back out there, I feel like that's something I want to try doing, especially doing this show with you.
Yeah, definitely.
What do the guidelines actually say about porters? What makes an American porter? Is that his own category? You said there were 2.
Yes. So there are some differences between the American porter and a British porter. There's also a ton of similarities as well.
Yeah.
So they're going to be a very dark brown to almost black in color.
Well, we got that.
Yep. They're going to fall short of pitch black like a stout.
Right.
But they're going to be darker than most brown ales, although there is some overlap, both with stouts on the high end and brown ales on the lower end.
I'd say so, for sure, on this.
Porters are typically not super strong beers.
Okay.
And they're, like, as I said, they're going to be roasty, but not like a harsh, intense roastiness.
Right.
Think of more like chocolatey, coffee, things like that. Versus that's more on the American side. The British side is going to have more of like rich caramel and toffee. Okay. So definitely on the sweeter end of rich maltiness.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I mean, I can appreciate both.
Yeah.
For sure. Both of those appeal to my sensibilities, absolutely. Tasting this, I mean, I can taste the balance. I mean, the hops are in there, but I wouldn't say this is a bitter, hoppy, or anything like that kind of a beer, just in general. I mean, we've talked about it before, just using that to balance out the malt.
Yeah. So a few of the things that the guidelines will say are actually comparisons to other beers, which is a really big thing, especially if you are studying to become a beer judge. The exam really deals a lot with comparing certain styles to other styles. And there's also a section for comments, and sometimes those comments can vary pretty widely, just based on all kinds of things that have to do with the beer.
Yeah, I feel like you're going to kind of get a lot of factors there too, plus the subjectivity of the judges. I know this. I know the guidelines are designed to sort of remove some of that subjectivity.
Yes.
But I think no matter what, you're going to kind of, not everybody's going to have the same nose. Not everybody's going to have the same taste buds.
Right, but it's good to have a good starting point baseline. And,
right.
Even if you don't want to become a beer judge, if you just enjoy craft beer, maybe you're a brewer, or maybe you're a home brewer that wants to think about like improving your beers, or maybe even entering a competition, The BJCP style guidelines are just a great free resource that can make you a more educated beer drinker as well as brewer. So going through the process of becoming a BJCP certified judge has certainly made me a better brewer.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I've had your beers, especially lately, and I mean, where you've come from when you first started to where you are now, I mean, it's impressive.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, I'd say this is the Edmund Fitzgerald's a real winner.
Yeah. So I know we talked a lot about the style guideline, but do you have any particular parts of the beer that stand out to you?
All in all, I mean, I love the roastiness. You can tell there's caramely. You can tell there's a little bit of sweetness now. I imagine the English porter is probably sweeter than this.
Yeah.
Probably significantly. But all around, I mean, just really enjoyable beer. I mean, I'm glad this is actually one that is so indicative of the style.
Yeah, so, get a hold of the guidelines on the app or on bjcp.org and do yourself a favor, get Edmund Fitzgerald, read through the porter while you're tasting Edmund Fitzgerald, and then that will help you to really understand what the words are conveying, because it's all present here in this beer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, we have another prime example, which is the Founders Porter.
They're just called porter, is another just prime example of the style.
Well, when you're just calling it porter, it seems like you're staking your flag in the ground firmly, like, this is the porter. I mean, come at us, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I'm always excited to drink a Founders beer. Now, this one feels quite a little bit roastier. Quite a bit roastier, I would say, even.
Roastier, and I'm getting a lot more chocolate in this one.
Yep.
The other one was a little bit more coffee and nutty.
Yeah.
Where this one's like
more chocolate.
A lot of chocolate in this one.
Not a lot of bitterness or anything like that either. So.
Yeah. And I feel like the bitterness is almost coming from the darker grains and not as much from the hops. Mm-hmm. And there's probably a little bit less hop flavor in this one too. It's yeah.
Yeah. So we're kind of using this just jargon to talk about how you would go about tasting it. So these are all just within the BJCP guidelines, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Tasting and for judging.
Yeah, I think the first step really to becoming a judge and to being a good evaluator of beer is being able to describe what you're perceiving very well.
Sure.
And then so there's description. And then in the BJCP guidelines, once you are able to accurately describe what you're tasting, smelling, perceiving, then you have the comparison. So it's, I have this, and I know what this is. Now look at the guidelines, and what does the guidelines say this should be?
Right.
Really being able to accurately describe and then compare to the guidelines.
Yeah. It's interesting the sheer levels of variance that you can go. I mean, it's nothing's really, concrete. It has to have exactly 5.6, alcohol by volume. It's got to be exactly, 120 IBUs. Right. It seems like there is a range. It's pretty good range.
There is a range, and for different styles, the ranges could be very wide or fairly narrow.
That's wild to me. So why BJCP? Why not something like I think Cicerone is the other really big one, right?
Yeah, so that's an excellent question. BJCP is what I use, and that's what most beer judges use when they are judging competitions.
Okay.
Right? The Cicerone definitely talks about the different beer styles and what you should expect.
Yeah.
But it's also a lot more geared towards servers and restaurants.
Right.
So there's a huge part of Cicerone talking about, pairings. What types of food can you pair it with?
Right.
Cleaning beer lines, cleaning glassware.
Oh, that's interesting.
All kinds of things like that. So you might find some of the nicer craft beer bars and things might actually require their bartenders or servers to become Cicerone certified, and that's a business thing showing that they know how to properly serve the consumer that has higher tastes. So the Brewers Association every single year puts out beer guidelines.
Okay, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So those tend to be a lot more hot on the trends, and there are more styles, but they're also a little bit more loosely defined. Where as the BJCP, you might have, 1 to 3 pages describing every single beer because you really have to know everything about it to evaluate it.
Yeah.
What I've read in the BA, the Brewers Association guidelines, are more like, maybe a paragraph or a couple of bullet points about each style.
Yeah. And now, is there a certification for that too? Is there all kinds of testing and stuff like that, or is it just kind of?
I don't think so, because they don't certify anybody to judge. It's really just a resource that they put out for brewers, professional brewers and home brewers alike.
That's interesting. Yeah. I didn't know about the Brewers Association one. That was interesting.
Yeah, that one is. We don't talk about it
that
much
don't.
Because I'm so pretty focused
on
BJCP
BJCP focused channel.
That's right. That's right.
Well,
but it's another resource out there for you.
There you go.
Yeah.
Sounds to me like there's a lot of resources for craft beer right now. Craft beer is really big.
Yes, there are.
So I think rounding out this particular flight, we've got Greenbush's Distorter.
It's a beer that I always have really enjoyed, but it's not one that the BJCP says is typical style.
I'm interested to see how this stacks up against the other two, which are commercial examples.
Absolutely. So as you're pouring it, I noticed on the can that it's actually a little bit of a heavy hitter. It's 7.2 alcohol.
That's a big boy.
Yeah, so that's probably a little bit outside of the style guidelines.
Now, obviously, we don't have enough time in the episode to talk about all of the styles in the BJCP guidelines.
Yeah.
But we've got a lot.
There are a lot of styles, yes.
Okay.
I don't have an accurate count right now, but I want to say there's over 100 styles.
Wow.
So there are, I want to say about 32 general categories.
Sure.
And then within those categories, there are subcategories, and those can be between 2 and 4 or 5 beers usually.
Interesting. You have like a vanilla porter or like a peppermint stout or something like that. How do you reconcile that with the guidelines? Do they have a specialty category for that? Or is it just kind of like, we're going to judge it as this, but just know that it has these extra flavors, these...
Yeah, no, those are excellent questions. So the first roughly 28 or 30 categories are the classic traditional styles.
Sure.
And they're usually, it's the classic American styles, the classic European styles, all these super classic world styles of beer.
Sure.
And then once you get way down, higher numbered in the categories, then you start going into the sour beers. The wood-aged beers.
Oh.
There are fruit beers.
Yes.
There are herb, spice, vegetable beers.
Yeah.
So, which...
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, it's cabbage? I'm not going to have a cabbage lager, but no. You can do a carrot cake beer. Could be an herb, spice, vegetable beer. Any pumpkin beers.
Any pumpkin beer.
Yeah. Coffee beers are usually fall into the herb, spice, vegetable category.
Okay.
And then any kind of beer that has like a spice in it. So, like a peppermint porter, or if you have a beer that has hot peppers in it, that can all fall within that herb, spice, vegetable category. So turns out there's a ton of beers in those specialty categories.
It seems like there's a lot to learn with this beer judging.
There is. Especially in the wild west of homebrewing and small craft breweries that are just trying to make wild flavors.
Sure.
But to answer the other point of your question was, how do you judge those crazy beers? When you're entering a beer into a competition in one of these specialty categories, a fruit beer category, a sour beer category, any of these, you have to declare a base style.
Oh, interesting.
Right.
Okay.
So you can't just say, here is my raspberry beer. Because you have to say,
anything.
So you have to say, okay, this is my American lager.
Yeah.
With raspberries in it.
Okay.
And then, I've talked before about how there's so much importance between having a good base beer and the good addition.
You have talked about that, yeah.
And I think that comes from just kind of my BJCP training, where in those categories, you have to be able to detect the base beer. It can't just be a carbonated raspberry drink hitting you over the head. You have to be able to detect that base beer too.
Sure. Well, I mean, I would say that probably, makes the distinction between a raspberry wheat beer versus drinking like a raspberry hard cider.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, or a seltzer,
or seltzer
right?
water is what I mean. Raspberry hard seltzer, like it's just okay. So that really helps narrow things down.
Yeah.
So
I think this beer is pretty good. I'm getting some like hay-like qualities to it, and
hay-like.
I don't know if that's like from the hops or the kind of the blend of malt, but I'm getting like. It's not funky or barnyard, anything like that. Like there'd be an infection, but it's more like the combination of malt and hops come across as like as dry, maybe a little bit peppery, a little bit grassy.
I can see that. Yeah, especially on the nose.
Mm-hmm. I do detect some of that alcohol. Mm-hmm. But it's not overpowering. It's still a very, very smooth beer, especially for a 7+ percenter.
Yeah. This one's a good one to put you to bed.
Yeah. I must say though that like this is not a bad beer, but I can see the other two were definitely on another level above this one. Like,
well, I feel like it's a little bit more concise.
Yeah.
I feel like I feel like there's something that this one has that the other two just didn't have. And I don't want to say that elevates, or denigrates either of the other two. Mm-hmm. But those other two, they were at least, I think, of similar quality. This one kind of stands off to the side just a little bit more, I think. Yeah. If I'm just going to use all of the metaphors in the world.
Well, and I think if I only had this beer, I think this is fantastic.
It's a great beer.
It's sometimes really it's beer. Just like tough act to follow when you have two beers that they say are of all the American porters in the world, these are two of the best.
Yeah.
And then you follow it up with this. This definitely is lagging behind a little bit.
Sure.
But still not bad.
No, not at all. And I mean, maybe I like the Founders better, maybe I like the Edmund Fitzgerald a little bit better. This one's nothing to sleep on. If you can get this, you will be happy with it. I think you'd be happy with this if you like American porters.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're looking for a porter and you see these three beers, I don't necessarily even want to rank them like 1, 2, 3.
Right.
But just know that the Greenbush is going to be a little bit stronger. You want a little bit more bang for your buck. Mm-hmm. This one's going to be a little bit stronger. It's also going to have some of those grassy notes.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely like grassy and hay-like notes to it. A little bit more earthy as well. The Founders is a bit more chocolatey.
I would say definitely so. Yeah.
And then the Edmund Fitzgerald, a little bit more coffee.
Yeah, coffee kind of. I felt caramely a little bit more.
Yep.
But wow, all three really excellent porters. Three really excellent American porters.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in to this episode, BJCP and Me, and this kind of completes our first segment of episodes.
Yeah.
Kind of showing you how to judge and all the different resources. So we look forward to really launching the channel with a bunch of different types of episodes coming up. So we'll do different episodes that might just do deep dive studies into one BJCP style.
Sure.
We'll continue some other more homebrewing, like ingredient related episodes, and then do some just kind of off the wall, kind of wacky episodes as well. So looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. All right. Well, cheers.
Cheers with empty glasses.
I know. Let's get a refill.
Let's do that.
All right.